Welcome to NYMTC's Program Finance and Administration Committee, or PFAC meeting. I'm Ian Francis, representative of New York State Department of Transportation, and today, chair of PFAC. Before we begin, I'd like to identify and point out the emergency exits, should there be an emergency evacuation required. There are 3 exits to this room. One is directly behind you. There's a second one in the corner, and thirdly, there's one on my far left. If you need assistance, please speak to a NYMTC staff. I'll ask that NYMTC staff please raise their hands. Thank you. Now I'd like to begin this meeting with introductions of the members around the table. I'm asking each member to announce who they are, their agency, and whom they are representing today. Beginning on the table to my far left, please speak clearly into the microphone.
Hannah Greenberg, US EPA, representing Regional Administrator Peter Lopez.
Dan Moser, FTA, representing Regional Administrator Steve Goodman.
Christine Thorkelson, Federal Highway Administration, representing Peter Osborne, Division Administrator, New York Division.
Bob Brickman, representing Nassau County Executive Laura Curran.
Chris Chatterton, Suffolk County, representing County Executive Steve Ballone.
Jack Schmidt, New York City Department of City Planning, representing City Planning Commission Chair Marissa Lago.
Karen Summer, New York City Department of Transportation, representing Commissioner Trautenberg.
Jose Rivera, NYMTC.
Naomi Klein, Westchester County Department of Public Works and Transportation, representing County Executive George Latimer.
Sandra Fusco, Putnam County, representing Putnam County Executive Mary Ellen O'Dell.
Pat Gurdon, Rockland County, representing County Executive Ed Day.
Lou Vanich, Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, representing our Executive Director, Rick Cotton.
Thank you all. By my count, under our operating procedures, we have a quorum for today's meeting. Today we'll be given a presentation by Michael Replogle, Deputy Commissioner of Policy for the New York City Department of Transportation. We will also take action as members of PFAC on a few required products, the Uniform Planning Work Program, as well as other amendments to the Regional Transportation Plan and Work Program. At this time, NYMTC's Executive Director, Jose Rivera, will give a report on their latest activities.
Good afternoon again, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to our first meeting of the year, our first Program Finance and Administration Committee meeting of 2018. So before we get started, as many of you know, we have some new members to NYMTC. Some of the more recent members, we have Westchester County Executive George Latimer, and we have Nassau County Executive Laura Curran, as well as New York State DOT Commissioner Paul Karras. These are some of the more recent members, so welcome them to the team. I'm sure that with their vision and leadership, we will continue to address the transportation planning challenges that we face in this region. Getting back to today's agenda, the PFAC members will be acting on the recommendation of NYMTC's draft state fiscal year 2018-2019 Unified Planning Work Program for council adoption. The UPWP, as we call it, is a guiding document that helps NYMTC and its members to determine how federal funding will be spent each year for planning activities. Additionally, members of PFAC will take action on new safety performance targets, and they will also be recommending projects for funding through the federal fiscal year 2016-2017 Section 5310 program, otherwise known as the Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Public Transportation Grants Program. Joining us later, as Ian just mentioned, will be our guest speaker, New York City Department of Transportation Deputy Commissioner Michael Replogle, who will provide us with a special presentation on New York City's new and innovative technology challenge. Also, I want to announce that our annual meeting is going to take place on Tuesday, February 27th at the City College of New York. There's more information available at the table outside. There's more information regarding the meeting available at our website, www.NYMTC.org. So with that, I'd like to pass it over back to Ian for the public participation portion of this meeting.
Thank you. We're about to begin our public participation at this point. We've set aside 15 minutes of the agenda to hear from registered speakers. We will hear from these speakers in the order that they are registered to speak for the duration of the allotted time. We ask that all registered speakers limit your comments to relevant transportation and planning related items and to less than 3 minutes so that we can hear from as many speakers as possible in the allotted time. If you have written comments, you can give them to me when you approach the microphone. Please provide it in the front of this dais. Our first speaker today is Neil Weissman regarding the Complete George.
Secretary. Thank you. Director Rivera, council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak. You have copies of extended remarks. Hopefully this will be fun. It's a thought experiment on how George Washington Bridge Chief Engineer Ahmar Aman might advise on current plans to restore the George. We have insight into his thinking from early use projections, design drawings, and precedent architecture. Prior to its opening in 1931, the agency projected GWB traffic for 30 years, broken out by mode of travel. Notably, travel by foot was projected to grow faster than by car, 3% a year versus 2.5%. And while budgetary constraints may have limited bridge paths to 8 foot, the original designs called for 16 foot, fully anticipating modern design standards. Now, these two items tell us that the agency foresaw the need for greater path capacity, but not why. Perhaps it was for cyclists, who were then told the same as motorcycles. Their catchment far exceeds pedestrians, and it makes more sense to put them on widened paths than increasingly crowded roadways. A complementary reason can be had by standing on the paths themselves and looking outwards. Extending them beyond the cables creates a continuous, unobstructed belvedere with views like none other in the region. And confirming that the agency envisioned revenue from the George as a destination and the site of grand celebrations was reported in its reporting of pedestrian tolls from opening day. That idea is bolstered by a contemporary study by the same people who did Walkway Over the Hudson, which projects that a GWB linear park would attract 300,000 new visitors per year, spending $42 million. And Mr. Ahmed would certainly have been influenced by the Williamsburg Bridge, which connected Brooklyn to Manhattan by a pair of 20-foot paths. So what would the chief engineer advise? Well, he would be aware that cycling's double-digit growth far exceeds other modes today and in 1931. He would realize the George's potential as a tourist mecca to drive foot traffic and commercial revenue in the bus terminal. The impact of active transportation on public health, affordability, sustainability, and resilience, and the GWB's centrality to the regional bike grid. And also a precedent architecture, cycling facilities on bridges throughout the region. Also the broad public support for wider paths, now including 56 municipalities in North Jersey and a pair of county executives. The same group Mr. Aman lobbied in the 1920s to get the bridge built in the first place. Taken together, I believe the politically astute chief engineer would advise to widen the paths, and he would allocate a portion of the lower level to mitigate the visual disruption of the anti-suicide barriers. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes our public participation for this meeting. We have 6 action items to take action on this afternoon. The first action item is the November 16th, 2017 meeting synopsis. There were copies available on the table as you entered. I'll ask the members for a motion to accept the meeting synopsis.
Naomi Klein, Westchester County, so moved.
Naomi Klein moves the motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Bob Brickman, Nassau County.
Bob Brickman, Nassau County, seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? Then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Our second action item is resolution number 457, recommendation of the draft state fiscal year 2018 through 2019 Unified Planning Work Program. I'll ask that Setu Allen introduce the resolution.
Good afternoon. So this is resolution number 457, the PFAC recommendation of the draft state fiscal year 2018-2019 Unified Planning Work Program for council adoption. Before going to the presentation, like any NYMTC product, there's a lot of collaborative effort, so I do want to thank both NYMTC staff for their efforts in defining the work program, as well as both the member agencies and the member agent staff for their support in developing this product. So the Unified Planning Work Program, it is a required product of the planning process. It serves as a type of budget as well as a grant application. This budget defines the work and the resources to accomplish that work over the course of the program year. It also serves as a grant application whose successful completion allows for federal funding to come into the region to support the planning activities that are defined within the work program. It's also an important element of the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process. So the UPWP provides a strategic framework. It's based upon the national performance goals, the members' plans and programs, as well as the regional goals that you have identified in the Regional Transportation Plan, Plan 2045. It does bring in federal funding to the region to support both NYMTC staff activities, the members' planning program, as well as professional services. So how is the draft program built? Well, it starts with the federal authorizing legislation, currently the FAST Act, as well as the performance goals and the federal planning emphasis areas. Also, just as important is the long-range transportation plan, Plan 2045, as well as the regional goals and the shared vision that you've identified, as well as the near-term actions that have been identified in the plan. In addition, the draft work program takes into account your own individual plans and priorities. And all of this comes together into what becomes eventually the Unified Planning Work Program. So how is the draft work program to be funded? Roughly 55% of the funding will come collectively from FTA and FHWA as new money for the 18-19 program year, as well as the local match for that new funding. The remaining 45% comes from previously program funding that was not yet used and is being brought into the upcoming fiscal program year. The total program is, in terms of funding, is estimated at roughly $41.5 million. In terms of using the proposed funding, roughly 40% will go to support the members' activities, and the remaining 60% goes to, roughly 60% goes to support NYMTC staff activities. So the NYMTC program can be divided into two parts. We have the core program, what we have to do as an MPO, as well as the discretionary program. So the core program, this reflects the work that we have to do in order to develop the required planning products, such as the next RTP, the next UPWP, updates to the public involvement plan, as well as developing the required analyses, for example, our work to comply with performance-based planning and programming, as well as conformity analyses, and the congestion management process. In addition, we have to continue to operate the planning process, which involves the work of the PFAC and the TCCs, as well as the various public outreach efforts that the MPO engages in, our ad hoc study committees, our planning groups, as well as the Title VI program. In addition, NYMTC will have to maintain its technical capacities, which involves things like continuing to update the New York best practice model, which is our travel demand forecasting tool. Various surveys will be conducted both by NYMTC staff as well as some surveys that are being conducted at the member agencies, as well as other workshops, forums, and other types of forecast and data collection activities. So in addition to that core work, we also have the discretionary program, And these are projects that are typically managed by the member agencies, although a couple are going to be managed by NYMTC staff. All of these projects have a basis in the plan, and specifically a basis in your shared vision. And this is just a listing of some of the projects, not all of them. There are actually 31 new or continuing discretionary studies in the 2018-19 UPWP. Some of them NYMTC staff, but most of them, like I said, are going to be managed by the various member agencies. That was just a brief overview of the work program, and at this time I'd like to request that the PFAC recommend the draft state fiscal year 2018-2019 UPWP for council adoption.
Thank you, Setu. I'm looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 457, recommendation, okay.
Sorry.
Recommendation of the draft state fiscal year 2018 to 2019 Unified Planning Work Program. We have a motion by Jack Schmidt,
So
New York City Planning.
Second, Rockland County.
Second, Rockland County. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you. Our next action item is on resolution number 458, supporting safety performance targets under the Transportation Performance Management requirements. Jan Khan will introduce the resolution.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chairman, PFAC members, with the passage of the last two federal funding legislation, that's the moving ahead for progress in the 21st Sorry about that. Yeah, moving ahead for progress in the 21st century. That's MAP 21. And fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, the FAST Act. The federal government, that's US DOT, formalized a performance-driven approach to transportation planning, both at the state and the MPO level. With that in mind, there were a number of performance areas identified, including with their affiliated performance measures. These included safety, the transportation infrastructure, and systems performance. The first area with its measures that was finalized was safety. Based on this, the state is required, based on the regulations, the state is required to set its targets. Then the MPO has 180 days after that to set its own targets. And basically the MPO has two options. It could support the state's targets by programming relevant investments or develop its own quantifiable targets. New York State DOT set their targets for the safety performance measures in August of 2017. And so we are required to have our targets in place, that's NYMTC, by February of 27th of this year. After much deliberation, the NYMTC members decided the route they wanted to go was to support the state's targets by programming relevant investments. So with Resolution 458, we are asking you to adopt it so that we can follow the requirement to support the state's targets.
Thank you, Jan. I'm seeking a motion to adopt resolution number 458, supporting safety performance targets under the Transportation Performance Management requirements. Do I have a motion?
Bob Brickman, Nassau County. So moved.
Bob Brickman, Nassau County moves the motion.
Second, Jack Schmidt, City Planning.
Jack Schmidt of City Planning gave the second. Is there any discussion? Then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
Our next action item is resolution number 459, recommendation of projects to be funded through the federal fiscal year 2016 and 2017, Section 5310, Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Program. Angelina Foster will introduce the resolution.
Good afternoon, members and the public. Today I'm going to talk briefly about Resolution 459, which is to recommend the actual projects selected to be funded from federal fiscal year 16 and 2017 of our FTA Section 5310 funding. I first would be remiss if I didn't note that in your package, somehow the body of this resolution got mixed up. While the title does in fact call out the program, the body itself is from last year's resolution, so we will be correcting that. But good news is the attachment is the actual projects that we selected through our subcommittee process. This program is for the elderly and individuals with disabilities. You can be either or, you don't have to be both. We did go through a process here at NYMTC of evaluating this as a part of the statewide solicitation for these funds. And we had quite a large request and demand for funding. It actually was twice the amount of projects received than the funding we had. We got close to $34 million in project request for the $17 million that was available. We have publicly reviewed these projects as a part of our PFAC public review and notification process. And so with your vote today, which I'm asking for, we would then enter into the TIP process for these projects. Do you have any questions? Thank you.
I'm seeking a motion to adopt resolution number 459, recommendation of projects to be funded through the federal fiscal years 2016 and 2017, Section 5310, Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Program.
So moved, Naomi Klein, Westchester County.
Naomi Klein, Westchester County moves the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Chris Chatterton, Suffolk County.
Chris Chatterton, Suffolk County, gave the second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Our next action item is resolution number 460, amendments to the federal fiscal year 2018 to 2045 regional transportation plan to maintain fiscal constraint. Leslie Forger will introduce the resolution.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I come here to speak about Resolution 460. What is Resolution 460? Well, it has two components to it. One is to change the existing Table 7.2 of Chapter 7 of Plan 2045, and two is to move an existing vision project, which is the New York 27 County Road 46 to Barnes Road Diamond Interchange project, from the vision to the tip. Why do we need to do this? Well, since we last met, the tip has changed. In order to have the plan reflect what's in the tip, and vice versa, PFAC staff recommends we adopt this resolution, excuse me. That is all.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeking a motion to adopt resolution number 460, amendments to the federal fiscal year 2018 to 2045 regional transportation plan 2045 to maintain fiscal constraint. Motion?
So moved, Putnam County.
Putnam County moves the motion. Is there a second?
Karen Summer, New York City.
Karen Summer, New York City, seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? If there are no abstentions, then the motion passes. Our final action item for today is resolution number 461, amendments to the state fiscal year 2017 to 2018 Unified Planning Work Program. Setu Allen will introduce the resolution.
Good afternoon. So this resolution just involves adding some additional funding to Nassau County's 2017-2018 Unified Work Program for the SCD Forecast Project to support work related to LUCA activity, local update of census addresses. Putnam County is also requesting to add some funding to certain core projects, Plan 2045 maintenance, program management, and data management, and that's to support their staff activities for those projects during the current program year. NYMTC staff have reviewed these actions and found them to be consistent with the plan. For the Nassau County activity, that is carryover, but new funding is requested for the Putnam County actions. NYMTC staff requests that you adopt this resolution.
Thank you. I'm seeking a motion to adopt resolution number 461, amendments to the state fiscal year 2017 to 2018 Unified Planning Work Program. Do you have a motion?
So moved. Bob Brickman, Nassau County.
Bob Brickman, Nassau County moves a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Rockland County.
Rockland County seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions. The motion passes. I'll now turn the program over to NYMTC's Executive Director, Jose Rivera.
Okay, good afternoon again. So it's time for our presentation for the day. It's my pleasure to introduce Deputy Commissioner, New York City DOT Deputy Commissioner Replogle. Michael Replogle was appointed Deputy Commissioner for Policy in June 2015. As the manager of DOT's policy team, he develops strategy and advises the Commissioner and City Hall on a broad array of transportation issues. Some of the key team initiatives that he's addressed with his team include development of an agency-wide strategic plan, Vision Zero efforts to eliminate road crash-related deaths and serious injuries, freight and parking strategies, climate change mitigation and resiliency, and shared mobility. So without further ado, please welcome Deputy Commissioner Pope.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I have to apologize for my voice, which is not quite up to its normal snuff today. I'm on the edge of whatever's going around these days. I want to talk today about New York City, the NYCx Climate Action Challenge. Okay. Can you hear better now? Okay. I want to talk about the NYCx Climate Action Challenge and New York City's work around creating expanded opportunities for electric vehicle infrastructure and charging. The city has a strong commitment to reduce greenhouse gas goals. Climate change poses a huge challenge to our region. We have over 500 miles of coastline in New York City alone, and we saw with Superstorm Sandy the vulnerabilities that we have here as a city and as a region. So we as a city, and in fact the region and the state, all have adopted fairly ambitious targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. At the city level, we're committed to an 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions below 2005 levels by 2050, and a 40% reduction below those 2005 levels by 2030. In May of 2017, Mayor de Blasio signed Executive Order 26, which affirmed New York City's commitment to the Paris Climate Accord and to accelerated progress on our greenhouse gas reduction strategies that were articulated in the 80 by 50 action plan. And after buildings, transportation are the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions for New York City. And we can certainly do more, even though we're the most greenhouse gas efficient city in the nation in terms of transportation emissions per capita. We still have twice the emissions of cities like London and Seoul and Paris. And so there are things we can learn from those other places, and we look at our own actions and we see ways that we can bring our emissions down. Most of our emissions do come from light-duty vehicles, although goods movement is a growing share of the emission inventory. The keys to decarbonizing our transport in New York City, there's no single bullet that's a magic bullet to solve these problems, but we have about 2/3 of all trips in New York City today made by walking, cycling, and public transportation. We aspire to increase that to 4/5 of all trips by 2050, including shared mobility. We can do more to improve our network efficiency. Congestion is not good for greenhouse gas emissions, and we know we can operate networks in a smarter fashion using intelligent transportation systems to better manage traffic and bringing technology to bear so that we can better match demand and supply. Freight logistics is another area where we've got a lot of room for growth in our efficiency, shifting more to off-hour deliveries, shifting to fuller trucks through more efficient supply chain management and the like, freight consolidation and the like. Fuel efficiency standards is something that's not under the city's control. It's generally set at the federal level through federal government action and the California emission standards, which can be set as a grandfathered standard, more stringent than the federal standard. And New York has opted in to those more stringent California standards, and they account those fuel economy standards will account for the biggest share of our greenhouse gas reduction in future years. But they alone won't get us to our goals. And so we do indeed need to also accelerate the electrification of motor vehicles in order to move towards decarbonization. It's, I think most experts agree that that is crucial to our long-term pathway to progress. So as we look to develop cities' electric vehicle charging efforts, it's important to look at where we're starting from. Electric vehicles currently constitute well less than 1% of our 2 million light-duty vehicles in New York City, accounting for about 3,000 battery electric vehicles registered today. And we can also see that the city's number of charging stations, while increasing, is still pretty small. When we look at the key barriers to adoption of electric vehicles, these have been around for some years. The costs have tended to be high, but these are coming down rapidly with most major car makers introducing affordable electric vehicles in the next several years. The range has been another key issue. With 80 to 100 mile range typical up until recently, but now a number of affordable EVs are coming into the market with ranges of 200 to 400 miles. EV charging infrastructure access has been another key challenge, especially in New York City, where the majority of car owners park their vehicles on city streets rather than in a garage. If you look at the infrastructure that we have for electric vehicle charging, we lag that of many other American cities in terms of the electric vehicle share and the amount of charging infrastructure and supports that we have for electrification of transportation. So we know there's more that we can do, learning from other cities. The mayor recently articulated a goal that 20% of light-duty vehicle sales of motor vehicles should be electric vehicles by 2025. And in order to help support our 80 by 50 greenhouse gas plan. And so in response to this, we have set out to develop a citywide electric vehicle infrastructure roadmap this year to guide policy and investment in this area. We're working with Con Ed and other stakeholders to help develop a partnership for 100 or more on-street Type 2 chargers over the next year and a half or so, and to look at how we can site those most effectively as part of a pilot initiative. Now, these are there are really three classes of electric vehicle charges that it's useful to think about. The Type 1 chargers are plugging into a 110 volt in your garage, and that takes forever to charge an electric vehicle. The Type 2 chargers are more like the kind of line that you have to support your electric dryer or washing machine or an electric stove. It's a 220 line, a little higher amperage and more kilowatt hours. And this will basically over 6 to 8 hours give you a full tank on your electric vehicle for a light-duty vehicle. But then fast charging units take much higher amperages and much higher numbers of kilowatts of power supply in order to charge the vehicle more quickly. And these fast charge units are much more expensive to provide, much harder to site, have more constraints in terms of the electric vehicle infrastructure, and because of the demand, they have higher demand charges. So the charge to the users will tend to be higher for fast charging than for slower charging. So that's just a little bit of the typology of this, but we are also working, and the mayor's made a commitment of $20 million towards developing DC fast charge hubs in the city, with the goal of beginning development of 5 of these by the end of this year and initiating up to 50 by the end of 2020. We're also looking at installing some additional Type 2 chargers in our municipal vehicle garages. We may do some fast charge hubs in those as well. And currently we have about a little over a dozen, a couple dozen of these, and are installing them at a slow rate, but have many more conduit-ready spaces in our garages. We are also developing other efforts. DCAS, our municipal fleet operator, has 1,000 municipal plug-in electric vehicles. We're going to double that by 2025. We're working in collaboration with MTA on an all-electric bus pilot on 2 different routes in Midtown Manhattan and Brooklyn, testing different technologies. Our DOT car share pilot program, which is rolling out this year, may offer opportunities for electric vehicle car share for some portion of that pilot. We're looking at freight strategies and exploring incentives and removing barriers for e-trucks and e-trikes. And we're looking at workplace charging strategies. And we already have requirements for conduit-ready parking spaces in many buildings and new parking garages, and incentives for investments in chargers. So the New York NYCx Climate Action Challenge is another effort that was launched just a month ago by the Chief Technology Officer of New York City in collaboration with New York City DOT, DCAS, New York City DOT, and some other agencies, and also with collaboration from the City of Paris. And we're calling on the global technology industry to develop and deliver creative solutions to scale EV charging hubs and accelerate the use of EVs citywide. This is an area that's new enough that we really need to explore various kinds of business models for scaling EV infrastructure. And there are a lot of opportunities for new and emerging technologies to help us address that problem. So there are 2 tracks to this EV challenge. The first track is encouraging submissions from various stakeholders in the private sector and public sector to look at how we can jumpstart new technologies as part of our EV infrastructure initiatives. This could involve concepts like self-charging streets, inductive and wireless charging, super high speed electric vehicle charging greater than 350 kilowatts, solar carports, connected vehicle solutions, vehicle-to-grid technologies, and other new charging technologies that use existing street, garage, and building infrastructure. There's a second track to this, which is about how to more rapidly commercialize and take to scale the existing technologies for EV charging in the 25 to 150 kilowatt charging range, which is the Type 2 and Type 3 chargers, and in looking at solar parking canopies, integrated EV charging strategies, and the like. So the Climate Action Challenge itself, the expression of interest close date was earlier this week, and we had over 60 organizations submitting 35 expressions of interest. And this came from multinational corporations, universities, researchers, electrical grid operators, designers, architects, and others. By mid-February is a deadline to actually submit an application. By the middle of March, we'll be announcing the finalists and then announcing up to 4 winners by the end of April. And so those who win, up to 4 finalists will be awarded $20,000 each to develop and present proposals to the collaborating New York City agencies, as well as in the city of Paris later in the year. And the ideas from these finalists will be considered for inclusion in the New York City electric vehicle infrastructure roadmap work that we have ongoing now and will be wrapping up by later this year. We have 2 separate studies going on in that EV infrastructure roadmap, one more focused on off-street and one more on the on-street side of things, and we're coordinating those 2 studies and expect that we'll have a lot of very interesting things to report on that in terms of siting criteria and business model development for how we can best advance electric vehicle charging infrastructure in New York to meet the goals that have been established by the mayor and the de Blasio administration. So I welcome all of you to explore with interest this initiative, and if you know of organizations that would be interested in participating, to encourage that engagement, and stay tuned for further developments as we announce the finalists and the winners of this competition. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present about this today.
Thank you.
I'd be happy, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, I have a question for you. The all-electric bus pilot program, do you know how they intend to be charging the buses?
Yes, I mean, somebody from MTA might respond better than I, but as I understand it, they're testing 2 different types of charging approaches. One is an inductive charger that would basically be positioned over the top of the bus at some intermediate bus stops so that it could top up the bus along the route when stopping at waypoints for schedule adherence. And the other is more designed to sort of be an out and back solution, a little heavier, more batteries on the bus. 2 different manufacturers, 2 different technology approaches. The challenges of electrifying the bus fleet are considerable in terms of the demands on the electrical grid. I understand that if you were to electrify a full MTA bus terminal, where the buses are maintained, that would draw as much power as the Empire State Building. Just to put that into perspective. So the demand charges for that are quite considerable because the power is priced based on the demand draw on the network, and it's a marginal pricing system. And right now our electric utility regulatory structure in New York State has some potential to have adjustment of those demand charges, but it's a cumbersome process to make adjustments in those marginal demand charges in a way that doesn't work against moving towards fast charging for electrical vehicles. and towards very high demand terminals for charging, like a bus where you're trying to charge several hundred buses every evening. So there are a lot of issues that need to be worked out, and I think MTA is wise in taking a pilot approach to scaling this, testing on 2 routes, testing a couple technologies, seeing how that works. If you do look at the experience in China, Chinese cities are in fact moving rapidly towards the electrification of their transport sector, including buses, as well as light-duty vehicles. And China has committed to phase out gasoline and petroleum-fueled motor vehicles by, I believe, 2030. So ambitious targets are being set. Norway has similarly set ambitious targets for full decarbonization of their transport sector. So a lot of lessons that need to be learned from other places, but we need to start where we are and get some experience with some pilot initiatives. Yes?
One question might be, how would the electricity for all this be generated?
Well, that's a key question. I mean, I think, New York State has a mix of electricity. We get a lot from hydro, and that's very clean carbon. We get some from nuclear, which is clean but has its own issues. We still get some from coal and fossil fuels, and that certainly has a greenhouse gas impact. But I'm not an expert on it, but I know that the state is working towards reducing the carbon footprint of the electricity sector in the state and moving towards decarbonization with greater use of solar, wind, and hydro. Yes?
First of all, thank you for your presentation. It's very nice to see where the city is trying to move and the direction you've taken to remove these greenhouse gases. Will your presentation be available to the public?
Yeah, I see no reason why we couldn't make this available on the NYMTC website if that's of interest.
Are there any other questions?
You mentioned the electric trikes. What scale is that? We seem to be right on the cusp of the whole issue of the electric bicycle. Where is there any evolving thinking on this within the city?
I think it's a difficult issue politically right now, and I think currently under New York State law, electric bicycles or any bicycle with a motor is not capable of being registered by the State Motor Vehicle Administration, and if it has a motor and it's not registered, then it's illegal to operate on New York streets. There's 3 bills pending in the legislature that would address this in different ways. The DOT, City DOT has been working with NYPD towards supporting a strategy that would adopt pedal assist bicycles, low speed, under 20 miles an hour, as potentially legal to operate in the state. But the politics are difficult. And there are a lot of people who are just opposed to electric bikes in general because of the bad behavior of some cyclists who operate them. I think there is a lot of interest from the logistics carriers, UPS, DHL, FedEx, those types of groups in deploying electric assist, pedal assist bicycles or tricycles or quadricycles. One of those carriers recently remarked to me that something like 40% of the volume of packages and letters that they make deliveries on in Manhattan are letters and small packages that can fit in 1 cubic meter quadricycles or tricycles. And in other cities, they have shifted to delivering those by such pedal assist vehicles, electric vehicles, and thereby reducing the number of trucks on the city streets. So there are opportunities, I think, to explore that as we explore ways of reducing congestion in Manhattan. That might be one way to go forward, but we do have these legal and political challenges to work through. So it's too soon to say how this all works out. Yes?
Yeah, following up on the e-bikes, I understand that
officially they're illegal. And yet you see tens of thousands of them on the streets of New York. Now, the mayor proposed something about making, tracking down on the owners of the establishments. What's happening with that, and why are there still so many illegal vehicles on the streets of New York if they're illegal?
Well, I was at a town hall meeting with the mayor last night up on the Upper East Side, and he spoke to this issue and brought forward the police commander from the local precinct who spoke about how they indeed are looking to identify illegally operated electric bikes and go to the businesses that are being served by those and seeking to crack down on those. So the City Hall has said that it is taking action on this, and I know that there have been things posted in the media just in the last few weeks about increased enforcement efforts. I think this is an issue that's very complex, and there's, I think, opinions run high on both sides of what's a prudent approach to working through these issues.
My only point is that if they're illegal, and everyone can see that they're illegal, and they're running on the streets, then why aren't they arrested and punished?
Well, I can't answer. It's ultimately a police enforcement issue. It's a police resource issue. I think I'll leave it at that. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation that you outlined what the city's efforts are directly funding the charging stations. So what are the efforts the city's making to work with private companies who are in terms of siting and infrastructure?
Well, we are looking at ways in which there's a whole effort that's been funded by the Volkswagen emissions cheating scandal that Volkswagen put several $billion into a fund and set up an organization called Electrify America, which is giving out grants to state and local governments and supporting private investment efforts to, among other things, support electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And so the city's working with Con Ed and others in the private sector to explore opportunities for collaboration on developing electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And this challenge that the Chief Technology Officer issued is one opportunity, one of the channels by which we're seeking ideas from the public, from the private sector, to enhance cooperation.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Replogle, for your presentation. We enjoyed it. We look forward to hearing about the climate action challenge, and I hope you get a lot of applications.
Great.
I look forward to seeing the 4 pilot programs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Okay. The next NYMTC annual meeting will take place on February 27th at 11:15 at City College. We look forward to having you join us. The next PFAC meeting will take place on April 12th, 2018 at this office, at NYMTC's office on 25 Beaver Place in Lower Manhattan. At this point, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion, Chris Chatterton, Suffolk County.
Chris Chatterton moves it. Do we have a second?
Second, Jack Schmidt, City Planning.
Jack Schmidt seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.